If you're going to develop a more profitable business, you have to get this concept right. And I talked about this at the Taking Your Firm virtual conference. And I'm going to do a recap of that as we're doing this series of recapping our major events from 2020. Stay tuned for today's episode. So, if you've been following along, one of the things that you notice is we've been walking through the tour that we've been on for 2023, and we've spoken at a lot of great events. As I said, the beginning of the year started off a little slower because we wanted to focus on really nailing down some things for the business. So, we did one speaking engagement in June. In January, we did one in June, and then by August, things kicked in high gear. And so my wife and I took a vacation back in July, which was much needed to prepare for the marathon for the rest of the year. And this isn't including all of the speaking engagements that came after the month of September, because by the time I'm filming this now, like I literally just walked off the virtual stage of a conference that I spoke at. Now we're filming this episode. So there is so much more to recap. But this one, we're talking about what we talked about in August at the Taking Your Firm virtual conference. Now, that one was hosted by the Niall Carter Gray, amazing friend. She's doing some great work in the community of really helping not only her clients, but also helping other accounting firms get better at running profitable accounting practices and making those mental switches or making the progress that's necessary to really take things to the next level. And a lot of times, what it takes to go to the next level is a little bit of a tweak. And so she asked me to give a speech about how we use automation when it comes down to customer expectations. Now, the reason why this becomes such a very big thing is because when you are growing a business, if you are going to make your business more profitable, one of the things that you have to get down and you have to figure out is how to manage your client expectations. Because if you can't effectively manage your client expectations, you are not going to be able to grow your business in a substantial way. This is one of those things that I've seen for a lot of businesses where they grow really, really fast because people expected a lot from them. But then the next year, you see their revenue just dropping and their business just falling off. And it's because they couldn't actually manage the expectations. They sold this really, really big dream, but they couldn't deliver. So no one wanted to continue doing business with them. And that's a big thing that gets a lot of people in trouble, is that having a successful business isn't about having that really big moment. It's about being able to have sustained moments over time so that you can continue to show up and win in your business. So, this is a very big topic. And because of all of the great things going on with automation, there's so many ways to leverage automation to actually manage that client experience. And so, this was a fun one because I got a chance to play around with the concepts a little bit. Because what I told people is when it comes down to automation in the accounting industry, because I was speaking to a predominantly accounting audience. But when it comes down to the accounting industry, one of the things that I notice is that accountants tend to struggle in this area. And the reason why they're struggling in this area is because they hear about something and they just try to run with it. And the example I gave is something real world story that I learned, and I learned it from my nephew. So when my nephew was a much, much younger, little toddler age, taught me a very valuable life lesson. And because, see, at that age, when kids see you do stuff, they just want to repeat it. So let me paint this picture for you. So let's say that I have a hammer, I have a nail, and I am trying to put a nail in the wall so I can hang a picture. Now, from my nephew's perspective, the only thing he sees me swinging this hammer at this wall. He has no idea why I'm doing it. He has no context around it. He just sees the hammer and he just sees me swinging it. So within the next 5 minutes, I see him walking around with something in his hand and he's just going around swinging it and he's going to town on everything. He's hitting lamps, he's hitting furniture, he's hitting chairs, he's trying to hit people. And what I had to take a step back and say, okay, all right, what the heck is going on? First, let me get this out of your hand so you don't end up hurting yourself or hurting someone else. But what I had to realize is, you know what? I can't really get mad at you because no one's ever taught you the proper way to use a hammer. No one has ever taught you that a hammer is a tool that serves a purpose. And if you think about it, the way people talk about automation as if automation is like the miracle working tool that's going to fix everything, but most people don't realize that automation is simply that. It is a tool. It is a tool that serves a purpose. And the thing is, it doesn't fix everything. Automation fix some things, but if you use it improperly, you're going to have a huge mess on your hand. And a lot of people are like, when it comes down to new cool things like automation or technology that come out, a lot of people are just like my nephew, just going around trying to hit everything with a hammer, but you got to learn things in context. So the next thing I talked about with the audience was when you're thinking about, whether it's automation, whether it's this new tool or this new app, or even if you're thinking about new processes, when you think about that, you have to look at it in perspective and ask yourself, like, okay, all right, what purpose does this serve? Because this is just one tool in an entire toolkit. Because every tool in the toolkit does not serve the same function. Now, some tools in the toolkit will serve multiple functions or will have similar kind of tasks that you can do with them. But if you really think about it, every tool has some unique qualities that are really going to make a difference. And there's a reason why you have different types of tools in an entire kit because not everything specializes in the same thing. So you do want to kind of understand that, hi, how should I be using this tool? Now, the very first thing that I always tell people is when it comes down to using a tool, what you should understand is you really got to understand what is the purpose that we're trying to achieve. See, this is where a lot of people struggle in their business is they don't really take a step back and say, hey, what am I actually trying to do here? Like, what am I really trying to achieve? Because the thing is, if you're just running around throwing processes or throwing money or just even trying to throw people at problems and you don't really take a step back to ask yourself, what am I trying to achieve here? You're going to struggle a lot. You're not going to know how to really navigate the tools that you're trying to use. You're not going to be able to use them to the best of your ability. So you do want to take that step back and ask yourself, what am I trying to do here? Because see, when you don't take that step back and ask yourself, what are you trying to do here? What you end up doing is you just end up following the crowd and you end up following people and you end up doing things that are eventually going to hurt you. And sometimes they might hurt other people. Like, for example, I took them, I said, let's go down memory lane a little bit and let's think back to some of those those trends on social media, those trends where people start doing different stuff where they would do something really out of the blocks and it would get a lot of attention on social media, but for some people it didn't turn out all that well. Like, for example, this one here. Remember that trend on social media where people were taking a power drill, they would put a corn on it and then they would turn the drill and they would try to eat it? Well, many people lost teeth trying to do this. And unfortunately, like if you're watching this on video, you can see the image that I have on the screen. The image is that girl that went viral because she used this drill and somehow her hair got caught in the drill. And when she turned the drill on, it actually snatched a patch of hair out of the front of her head because the drill got out of control. Now, what I'm telling you is when you take a tool and you use it for something that doesn't fit its intended purposes, you could set yourself up for some pretty serious potential damage. So you want to make sure that as you're looking at all the tools that you're looking at in your business, you want to take a step back and you want to ask yourself, what is the purpose of this tool and am I using it properly? For example, if you're hiring an accountant, what I would say is you want to get a proper understanding on what role should that accountant play in your business. Here's something that I advise a ton of businesses on. Let's say you hire an accountant because you need to get your taxes done. Well, if you hire this accountant to do your taxes, don't expect that accountant to be your CFO because that accountant may not have the skill set for that. And to be honest with you, if the accountant doesn't know what they're doing as a CFO, they might be giving you bad advice. And it's not because they're a bad person. It just means that, hey, they might specialize in tax. But if you're asking them to do something that is not their intended, skill set area, you might be setting yourself up for some damage or some potential danger. So you do want to understand, what is this tool, or what is the function? What is the purpose? What are we trying to achieve here? And do we have the right tool, the right resource, the right person to actually get that done? Now, here are some common things that I've noticed when people are trying to use automation or they're trying to use tools improperly. What ends up happening with, especially with automation, is people start getting very impersonal. Like, you've probably seen this on your social media page where someone sends you a random sales message and they're trying to get you to buy something or trying to get you to sign up for something. And you can clearly see in their message that, man, they just copied and pasted this message. Like, there's no personal touch to it whatsoever. It's like this is the same message that they sent to like 5,000 people. And it becomes very obvious. So when you're using automation improperly, it's going to look a bit spammy. I mean, and it's going to be impersonal. And also, one of the things that it does is it starts to turn people off, and people just don't want to deal with you anymore and they want to do something different. So, you want to make sure that you are really taking a step back and asking yourself, am I using automation in a way that is going to turn people off? You want to make sure you don't lose that personal touch. And I'm not saying that you got to pick up the phone and call every person or you got to handwrite every single email. But one of the big tips that you can do is, let's say if you needed to send a message out to a mass group of people. Well, one of the things that you can do is to take a step back and break all of those people into subgroups, because there's going to be some commonalities between the groups. And then maybe you can send a similar message to all of the people who like X, Y, and Z, and all the people who like, T, U, and V, and all the people who like ABC. Like, send them different messages to those subgroups, because it allows you to still use automation, but it allows you to get a little closer to being able to have that personal touch, as opposed to just blanket sending everybody the same exact message, and people will start to notice and turn you off. Now, one of the other things that I talked about is you got to have some safety rules when it comes down to using technology. So, if you're not watching the video on YouTube or on our website, I mean, you're missing out on some amazing like photos and memes. Like, when I shared this one during the session, a lot of people said when they saw this video, they just cringed. It was almost like they said, I could immediately feel pain as soon as I saw this picture pop up on the screen, Terrell. And that's why I love this presentation, because I could grab some visuals that could really bring the story to life. And this visual does it. Now, for those of you who are listening, I'm telling you, you're missing out if you're not watching it on YouTube or our website. But let me give you a little understanding on what the picture is. The picture is two guys that are working at a construction site, and apparently they didn't have a table to cut the wood on. So one of the guys gets on all fours, on his hands and his knees. He leans over and he lets the other worker use his back as the table. Now, what the guy is doing is he's trying to use an electric saw to cut through a piece of wood while it is on top of another guy's back. Like, this just screams disaster. This screams there is going to be a problem. Like, somebody's going to the hospital in this. I would never want to work with these two guys on this crew. So, the whole point about this was really helping people understand how to get, what are some safety rules when you're trying to use automation or some type of tool. Like, you got to have some safety rules. Now, here's the biggest thing that I tell people is you got to have a very clear objective. You got to know, what are we trying to achieve here? Like, that objective has to be very, very clear about what are we trying to do, because as you've probably seen it with so many tools, like, you can get so lost and wrapped up in how cool a tool is that you completely forget your objective. Like, I've seen so many people when it comes down to things like Chat GPT, where they went into ChatGPT to ask a very specific question. But after asking that very specific question, they went down this rabbit hole, and 2 hours later, they spent all this time on ChatGPT. And I'm just like, hey, did you forget your like real purpose? Like, you got to have some clarity so you don't get too lost. And the second thing that I really wanted to point out was, you really want to develop a blueprint. See, this is something that happens in the industry of building, where people do take the time. And the blueprint, what it does is it gives you a chance to sketch out what the building will look like, what the construction is going to entail, where you do start to look at some of the details and some of the aspects of how you're going to build this building, and you start laying that out. What it does is it helps you get a better picture about what to expect. And it also gives you a chance to start looking at, okay, all right, what is this going to take? What is going to be required for us to do this successfully and to do this effectively? Because if you don't take the time to do that, then you're probably going to find yourself hurting in the end, because you didn't take the time to get a good blueprint and you jumped into something before you actually laid out what the pieces should look like. Now, in the end of this presentation, like I said, this presentation was probably about, an hour long. I'm really condensing it for you, pulling out some of the highlights. But at the end of this presentation, I shared and I talked about something a way that we use automation. And it was on our CFO side, where we build out these CFO dashboards using automation. Like, we figured out how to align our bookkeeping, our accounting process to be able to take data from the client system and to be able to combine it in a way to create these automated dashboards and these files. Because what it did is it gave us a chance to create a new tool. Because one is, we were very clear about the objective, is that the client wanted something that was a lot clearer and cleaner and easy to understand, because they didn't want to look at the financial report. So we knew that was our objective. How do we come up with something like that? And then we laid out a blueprint of what it would look like. And then we looked at a couple of options, and we finally found a tool, a way of connecting it and creating these dashboards to where now we can create custom dashboards that solve that problem for clients. And it became a new way for us to monetize this automation process. And clients are extremely happy because it allows us to give them something that they need. But it did take some time for us to develop the tool and to figure out how to build this type of automation. Because, like I said, we went through some of those same steps that I showed you and I laid out before. Now, what I will say is the big point about this entire presentation was really, if automation is just simply a tool in a massive toolkit, it is not the end all be all. And so if you don't learn to use automation or technology in its proper perspective, you're probably going to find yourself hurting. But if you learn how to use it wisely, then you're going to set yourself up for some great opportunity. So that was a speech that we gave at Taking Your Firm Virtual. And the feedback we got was tremendous, because so many people said, hey, that perspective really helped me really rethink the way that we were approaching things. And also, it opened the door for us to do a lot more speaking engagement. So, we're going to continue the 2023 tour recap. So, stay tuned for the next episode where we're going to be covering the next speech that we gave, and it's going to be good. So, thanks for tuning in.